This program is made possible in part by Cerisi Conlon LLP, protecting the future and using the law as a force for good in both the courtroom and our communities. Online at cerisiconlon.com.
Hello and welcome. I'm glad you could be with us tonight. My guest is one of our Minnesota leaders. As you know, if you've watched the show a lot, I have an ongoing series interviewing stellar leaders from all walks of life here. And tonight I'm with an environmentalist. He is known internationally as well as nationally. He's got a background in economics and ecology, among other things. His name is Terry Gips, and I bet a lot of you do know of him or know him. He is a man that way back in '83, I believe, formed the Alliance for Sustainable Agriculture. And I've gotten to interview him a few times through the years, and his career has evolved and changed, but always environmentally oriented for the main part. Now he's the CEO of the Alliance for Sustainability. And I'll have him tell you about that in a minute. But I first have to share with you kind of my amazement when I read his resume. And I realized the man I know doing environment work has done so much for our state and community. And I just want to read a few things to share with you. So you'll be impressed too. So he was an aide to President Carter way back. He was the assistant to the chief economist at Cargill. He authored a book that's been very well received called Breaking the Pesticide Habit. He's been the co-chair of the Midwest Business for Social Responsibility. You've heard about that. He's been involved with Skiers Against Hunger. He's been a leader in his Jewish renewal community, and he's currently the head of what he calls a kindness campaign, and we'll ask him about that a bit later. He also is a father and a family man, and he has 4 active and wonderful kids. So we're taping now, I want to mention, on November 23rd, because things are changing and happening so fast, November 23rd, 2023. So keep that date in mind. Well, welcome, Terry.
Thanks so much,
You're
Mary. It's great to be with you.
When will she quit talking so I get to talk?
No, it's great listening.
Let's start, and then we'll get into your current work. Let's just start way back in the beginning, though. When did you get to Minnesota?
I came to Minnesota in 1981.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had come to Minnesota many times because I used to go up to the Boundary Waters to canoe. And so I always loved Minnesota, but I came in 81, or I moved here in 81.
Okay. In between, you went to college, graduate school at Yale Management.
Yeah, I went to Claremont in Southern California, undergrad, and then lived in Europe, and then came back and lived in Davis, California, in Northern California, and I co-founded the Sacramento Community Garden Program. So that was what I ended up doing there, and so that was very exciting because I had worked with teenage gangs when I was growing up in Illinois on the west side of Chicago. And what happened was that I worked for Jerry Brown when he first ran for governor in 1974. And I ran the campaign in Yolo County. And when that was over, I was trying to figure out what am I going to do. And I got to know a guy who was head of housing for Sacramento. And he said, why don't you start a community garden program? and working in our housing projects. And so this friend of mine from the campaign and I co-founded the Sacramento Community Garden Program way back in 1974. And
Is it still going?
Still going, and
that's
and in some of the worst housing projects of all of Sacramento that were very violent, and we turned them around, and it was really an impressive thing, ultimately involving 20 large gardens with 4,000 people. So that really changed my life.
I bet. One
Yeah.
of those turning points that
Yeah.
we look back on.
I didn't understand about how nature worked, and I all of a sudden learned. It was very powerful.
And all that healthy food then that
Yes.
Terry has been someone ahead of the curve in a pretty big way, in terms of diet, in terms of looking at how our food is grown, in terms of climate, of course. It all ties together. And one of my questions that I've pondered this week about you is, has being ahead of the curve, Terry, been stressful personally, even though I know you believe in what you're doing?
Yeah.
But you get a lot of pushback, I'm sure, from a lot of people.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I was pretty, I don't know if I would call myself mainstream, but I was the head of my student council way back in high school, and people thought I was pretty mainstream. I ate meat 3 times a day, and I didn't know what organic food was, and I was, you know, big athlete and, you know, that kind of thing. So I was pretty, you know, all-American kind of, you know, guy. But then later on, I started realizing a number of things, and that's when I began to change my diet. At the age of 21, I became a vegetarian, which was way ahead of its time.
You were early.
And so that was one significant thing. Just living in California exposed me to all kinds of weird things, like in those days, stuff called yogurt and sprouts and granola and all of avocados, guacamole. All of that was completely new for me. I had never had it before.
Not Midwestern type.
Not Midwestern
diet.
food. No, absolutely
Right,
not.
right.
And so, you know, having eaten meat 3 times a day, it was a very, very big change to do that. But I was a big leader in the anti-war movement when I was in college, my freshman year, and I realized, you know, why I didn't like the idea of older men sending young people who were opposed to the war, sending them to war. I said, if you think it's a good idea, you should, you know, go yourself.
Sign up.
But then I looked at my diet, and I love animals. I've always loved animals, and I said, you know, Terry, if you're going to eat them, you should be willing to kill them. And I said, if you're not willing to kill them, don't let other people do that for you. You have to step up, and I became a vegetarian.
Have you been surprised how long it's taken for the public to get to the point we are at in terms of diet?
Yeah, I am. A dear friend of mine is Francis Moore Lappé, who wrote Diet for a Small Planet and Food First, Beyond the Myth of Scarcity. And I guess in some ways I could say I'm not surprised, because it took me such a long time to wake up and realize what the impacts were from my lifestyle on so many people.
That book was like in the early 70s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, by 73, I'd become a vegetarian.
Because of that book, in part?
No, I didn't even know about the book, but I had had experiences traveling and living in Mexico where I saw how animals were killed, and I went, I don't want to be part of that, and so I, you know, decided to make the change, which was really hard, and my parents were not happy about it. But so, in answer to your question about like it taking a long time, yeah, I understand most movements take a long time. The women's suffrage movement took a long time,
long time.
you know, and LGBTQ took much less time, although painful time before that point. And I know that the environmental movement was there for a long time before it started having an impact, and we still have a long way to go. So I understand, and I guess what I would say is that as I've become aware of each of all of these different movements, I think that we can work together and collaborate more to help bring about the shift so that we really can create a healthy society.
So you've not been pushed back too much with in a way that slowed you down in terms of speaking and writing, etc.?
Yeah, I guess I would say that I would say I haven't been pushed back so much as I know what we need to do and how fast we need to do it. So that's what's frustrating, that we have a choice, we have options to change the way we grow food, change the way how we live. And these options actually can save us money and have us be healthier. And so they're win-win-win options. And I go, why aren't we doing that more quickly? So that part is frustrating. But often the question that I get from people is, well, how do you keep going in the face of, you know, the opposition in many ways? And my answer is really very simple, and that is that there are a lot of people and animals who don't have a choice about what's going on, and I do. And even though, regardless of how hard it may be for me or my organization or our country, I know that we do have power, and we can use our power, we can use our voice, and we can make a difference. So that is sort of what I focus on, is how can I be most effective in doing that?
You and I were just, before the taping started, talking about the whole concept of hope.
Yeah.
And you said, and tell the viewers what you were saying about how you've held on to hope as a momentum thing for yourself.
Yeah, I guess, you know, like all people, I think there have been times that I've been really struggling, and it's been very, very hard. And I had the chance to travel around the world, and in 1980 and 81 to document organic and sustainable agriculture around the world. And it was really incredible what I got to see, that we can turn things around. And it was during that time that I got these three messages. I had a near-death experience, a transformational experience in Sri Lanka, and I got three messages from God, and one was that my body is a temple and I needed to purify it. And the second is that my purpose is to serve God, people, animals, the planet. And the third is we have very little time to turn things around. So since that time, I've dedicated my life to doing that. So there are lots of challenges. And when I came back to the United States after that, I was speaking around the country, and everybody was so excited. They had never heard about all of these farmers all over the world doing the great work they are. But I couldn't get people to change. I couldn't get my own family to change. I couldn't get my friends to change. I couldn't get, I knew politicians. I knew anchor woman Ruth Spencer from KSTP. And I couldn't get the media to do anything about it. And I also, I knew wealthy people, and I couldn't get them to support that. So it was very frustrating, and I became really depressed. And it was really at that time that I was just so struggling with what we were doing to the planet. It was really hard. And a professor at the University of Minnesota, Bill Cunningham, a biology professor, asked me to come speak. And I said, well, it'd be really hard for me, Bill, because what I have to share is pretty depressing, and at the same time very inspiring. And he said, well, I think it's important that you come. So I did my talk, and I showed slides about what was happening around the world, and people were really depressed and crying. And it was really hard. And I said, now I want to show you slides of what the inspiring things are that organic farmers are doing, in many cases risking their lives to do this. And then I finished by saying, and we have very little time left to turn things around. And afterwards, this very attractive man walked up to me and said, I agree with everything that you said. I want to support your efforts. And it turns out that that person was Horst Rechelbacher, the founder of the Aveda Corporation.
And you started working for him then, didn't you?
Well, I didn't even start working then. He said, let's have lunch. We talked. 6 weeks later, I was actually presenting at their World Congress with 600 of their leaders from around the world. And it was a result of that Aveda went organic. And so that really shifted, and I came out of my depression. I was just looking for one person who cared and was committed to making a difference.
Another big turning point,
A
Terry.
huge turning point for me, for the Alliance for Sustainability, for this nonprofit that I co-founded. And then we worked together, and it was interesting because about 9 years later, Horst asked me to have lunch, and he said, will you become Director of Ecological Affairs and Sustainability at Aveda? And he said, your job is to report to the earth, not to me. You have complete veto power over everything we do, which was really remarkable. And your other job is to get every other CEO you can to support sustainability. So that's why
a little harder job.
A little harder job, but that's why I had hope, because I realized that in the depths of this depression there was still this possibility. So my life is really committed to helping to bring about this shift that we can do. This is not hard. This is not a bad thing. It's a huge opportunity, and I just would like people to understand that their lives can really be transformed, that we can meet everybody's fundamental needs on this planet, and we don't have to wait for centuries.
You just need to get your word out more.
Yeah.
By the way, he's got a newsletter, and at the end of the show now we'll put some resource info up, and I would urge you to get on his newsletter list and keep updated. Well, when you talk about we're running out of time, I saw an article, and it was on your newsletter, I guess, about how we've kind of passed what a lot of experts call the tipping point. I mean, really recently.
Yeah.
But there's still hope.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're doomed to, to lose our Earth at this point. But for you, what would you think you would want to say to viewers who are thinking, I want to do something? We have so many areas we could focus on. We could focus on water. We could focus on animal manure. We could focus on our own diets. How would you best think the average person watching would be impactful?
Sure. I don't think that there is a best area. I think it's really what you're called to do, the things that you enjoy, that actually feed you, that inspire you, that move you. Whatever that is, it can be very simple. It could be supporting a neighbor. All kinds of simple things that we can do that can make a difference. All of that is what we think of as part of sustainability. And I think it's all really essential that we do that. And the place, though, I think we have to begin is really acknowledging whatever feelings that we're having. Whether it's hard, whether it's being depressed, being overwhelmed, feeling hopeless, fear, all of those things, we have to start with acknowledging that. And then I think once we acknowledge that, we can see that actually there are possibilities. And that's really the work that we do at the Alliance for Sustainability, is to show people every week in our newsletter, in our social media, and in our books and publications and speaking and trainings, that we can turn things around, that there are these possible changes that we can make easily. These are not hard. They don't have to take a lot of time. They don't have to cost a lot of money. And every one of those can make a difference. And when people know that, I think they can feel empowered. And so that I think would be the most important thing.
I like that, sort of follow your own natural instincts.
Yes.
Then. With children, and as I mentioned, he's got 4, they're also, teenage kids especially, are really realizing we're kind of in a tough situation here, our generation especially. And how do you suggest to parents and grandparents that we keep hope in front of the kids? Yeah,
I think it's a really great question. We know from studies that about 84% of young people are feeling this sense of overwhelm and eco-anxiety. And it's affecting almost half in terms of their daily lives, how they're living. So again, the same thing. We have to acknowledge what those feelings are. They're real. And the way they're seeing things need to be acknowledged. And then we believe at the Alliance that then we have to move to action. Then we have to really support everybody in really taking action, especially these young people. So we have a whole program, a youth and school program, aimed at teenagers in middle and high school, specifically to encourage them to take action. We've got a whole ebook and a slide presentation we'd like to share in every school about simple steps that these young people can take that will actually save them money, but also benefit them in terms of their health and overcoming what I think is one of the biggest challenges we have, which is loneliness. And Dr. Vivek Murthy, who's the Surgeon General of the U.S., says that the loneliness epidemic is the biggest health challenge that we have in this country, and it's so serious that it's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day for a person.
I hadn't heard that quote.
Yes, and he's
That's
been really
shocking.
leading a whole effort, and so we feel this is part of what our work is to have kids connect with each other and make a difference. And we've seen plenty of examples when kids do that, like where I live in St. Louis Park, where young people organized and developed, as a result, the toughest climate action plan in the state of Minnesota.
Wow.
So we have that kind of power, and we just need to support young people in actually using all of that energy. And I will add just that at the Alliance, we have interns from across the country, fabulous, energetic college interns, and they give me hope. They give me hope every day because I see they're committed to making a difference in the world.
We'll put the Alliance website and phone number up later. Your work with that has just been amazing, really. And it really evolved out of the Alliance for Sustainable Agriculture, of
Yes.
course, right?
Yes.
And
It's the same organization. It's just that
a new-
we decided to expand beyond just the food system, which we felt we needed to do, into overall sustainability, which we define as being ecologically sound, economically viable, socially just, and humane, embodying our highest values, how we treat people, animals, and the planet. So we feel we need to do all of those things, and we developed a campaign for sustainability, health, equity, and kindness. We call it She Kindness. And that campaign is really meant to bring about fundamental systems change, as well as being able to bring about personal and organizational transformation and impactful policies. So we do that. We have a youth and school program that I mentioned, and then we also have a business program. We're trying to share it with all businesses, and then also a public policy program. And we think that when people get engaged in any of those, so we would love to have people be involved, when people get engaged in any of those, they do have a sense of hope. And they do see that they can make a difference, and the quality of their life gets much better.
And that's something then for kids of high school age and older,
And middle school.
and middle school too.
But we have college
Okay.
interns also who work with
okay.
us from around the country
Okay.
virtually. And it's great to be with them all over, all different colleges and backgrounds.
And they give energy, don't they?
Huge. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I have so much hope.
We've only got 5 minutes left, Terry. But I want to ask you a couple sort of big questions, but I'll have to get tight answers. You're a leader, one of the leaders in our Jewish community. There's so much hard stuff going on now
Yeah.
in the world. And, everybody's in kind of a crisis mode, I
Yes.
think. Does that impact your work in a way that, can they dovetail somehow? How do you sort of make sense of it all?
Yeah, well, I think that the whole situation with the Israelis and Palestinians is very difficult, both there for both sides, and it's really difficult here for everyone on our college campuses, high school campuses, everywhere. And we sort of feel that a lot of the what we need to do is to have much more empathy and really do much more listening. And both sides have very strongly held feelings that are very legitimate about what the other side did to the other side. And we feel the place we have to begin is to acknowledge those feelings. And they're all real. And yet we are somehow going to have to say, yes, and now what? And we just can't keep doing what we're doing. And I think that's going to call for all of us to come together and be much more respectful and kind and actually have dialogue, which is taking place.
Have you ever been called upon to be a mediator?
I have mediated in many situations, and I would love to mediate in this situation, even though it's fraught with many, many challenges, because I've been labeled by both sides, all kinds of
I
things.
bet, I
and
bet.
so it's not easy.
Yeah, it's a hard time right now. Balance between home and work, as I told you, how busy you are and how much you're doing. Has your home life suffered because of it, or how do you keep it all going?
Well, I love being with my kids, so I could spend all my time just hanging out with them. But I'm also doing a lot of this work for my kids and all kids everywhere, so that they can have a future. And so I try to find that kind of balance, engaging them in some of the things that I do, and they're organic vegans like I am, and come to political things and other kinds of activities, so I try to do that. But at the same time, I also feel it's important for me to take care of myself, doing daily meditation and yoga and exercise and taking my dog for a 2-mile bike ride every day. So I think those kinds of things are extremely helpful. And then being with my friends and family and having those kinds of social connections. And then just time to play with my kids, I think is just really important, and or go to movies or do that kind of thing together.
Well, you must have a lot of energy to balance it all, Terry.
It takes a lot of energy. That's why I stay in good shape.
Yeah, you need to, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time in a few minutes now, really tight. The resources we're going to put up. First, the website for the Alliance.
Yeah.
And again, just in a sentence, tell us how you would best define it.
Yeah. So the mission of the Alliance is to bring about sustainability on a personal, organizational, and planetary level. And we're doing that through our campaign for sustainability, health, equity, and kindness. And we would love to have people involved. Go visit our website at afors.org, aforce.org, standing for Alliance for Sustainability. We'd love to have people come there. We have a free newsletter you can get every week. And so any way that, oh, and also I don't want to forget that we also have a pledge for sustainability, health, equity, and kindness. And we would love to have people sign that pledge.
Okay.
And that's on the website.
And you get that via the website?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Terry Gips, for joining me again. It's been a whirlwind and inspiring, very inspiring. So thank you for all you're doing.
Thanks for what you do, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. I hope you're able to listen hard and go check his website out. And the show will be on YouTube later, too, so you can catch it there also. Well, see you again in a year or two, I hope.
I will look forward to that. Thanks,
Okay.
Mary.
Thanks for being with us.